The morning sun rose over New Haven like it had every day for the past 15 years. Jake Morrison stood on his porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the endless fields of green wheat sway in the gentle breeze. The colony stretched out before him, neat rows of crops running to the horizon, broken only by the small white houses where his people lived. 50,000 souls called this place home now. They had come from Earth looking for something simple. A place to grow food, raise children, and live without the noise and crowds of the inner worlds. New Haven gave them that. The planet had been nothing but rocks and dust when they arrived. But human hands had turned it into something beautiful. Jake took a sip of his coffee and smiled. At 42, he had found his purpose as the colony administrator. Every morning he walked the same path through the settlement, checking on his people, making sure everything ran smoothly. Today would be no different. "Morning, Jake," called out Lisa Bell as she jogged past his house. The chief security officer ran the same route every day at 6 in the morning, her blonde hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She carried a small sidearm on her hip, more for wild animals than any real threat. New Haven had been peaceful since the day they landed. "Morning, Lisa. Everything quiet last night?" "Dead quiet, like always," she replied, not slowing her pace. Old Murphy thought he saw lights in the sky again, but it was probably just space junk burning up. Jake nodded and watched her disappear around the corner. Murphy had been seeing things for months now. The old farmer claimed strange ships were watching them from orbit, but the colony's basic sensors never picked up anything. Jake figured it was just an old man's imagination. He finished his coffee and headed into town. The main street buzzed with quiet activity. Farmers loaded their trucks with supplies for the day's work. Children walked to school, their laughter echoing off the simple buildings. Shop owners opened their doors and greeted their neighbors with warm smiles. "Jake, good to see you," said Dr. Carl Hayes as he stepped out of the medical center. The doctor was a thin man in his 50s with kind eyes and gentle hands. He had delivered half the babies in New Haven and treated everything from broken bones to common colds. "Mrs. Peterson's new baby is doing great. Strong as an ox, just like his father." "That's wonderful news, Carl. How are our medical supplies looking?" "Good for now, but we'll need more antibiotics in the next supply run." "Nothing urgent, though. People here are pretty healthy." Jake made a mental note and continued his walk. The colony had grown slowly but steadily over the years. What started as a few hundred desperate families had become a thriving community. They grew enough food to feed themselves and still had surplus to trade with passing merchant ships. At the agricultural center, Nina Walsh was already at work. The director of farming operations stood in front of a large map, marking which fields needed harvesting next. Her brown hair was streaked with gray, and her hands showed the calluses of someone who had spent years working the soil. "Morning, Nina. How are the crops looking?" "Better than ever," she said with pride. "The new irrigation system is working perfectly. We should have our biggest harvest yet this season. The wheat is ready in Sector 7, and the corn in Sector 12 should be ready next week. Any problems I should know about?" "Nothing major. Pete Sullivan is fixing one of the big harvesters, but he says it'll be ready by tomorrow." "That man can fix anything with an engine," Jake smiled. Pete was the colony's best mechanic, a stocky man with grease under his fingernails and a solution for every problem. He had kept their aging equipment running long past its expected life. Without him, the colony would have failed years ago. The communication center was Jake's next stop. Sandy Brooks sat at her desk, monitoring the radio channels for any incoming messages. The redhead had been the colony's link to the outside world since the beginning, handling everything from supply orders to messages from families back on Earth. "Anything interesting today, Sandy?" "Just the usual. Weather reports, some chatter from the mining stations in the next system, and a message from Earth for the Johnson family." Oh, and there's a merchant ship passing through next week. They want to trade for some of our grain. Sounds good. Set up a meeting." As Jake walked back toward his office, he passed the school where Mary Johnson was teaching a group of children about Earth history. The older woman had been a teacher for 30 years before coming to New Haven, and she brought the same patience and wisdom to her work here. Her students loved her stories about the old world, even if they could barely imagine cities with millions of people dot near the edge of town. 17-year-old Danny Rodriguez was working on his family's farm with his father. The teenager had been born on New Haven and knew no other life. He could drive any piece of farm equipment, fix most mechanical problems, and navigate the colony's roads in the dark. Like most of the young people here, he was strong, smart, and completely innocent of the galaxy's dangers. Jake reached his office and sat down at his desk. The morning reports were waiting for him. Production numbers, maintenance schedules, and requests from various departments. It was boring work, but it kept the colony running smoothly. Through his window, he could see the landing pad where supply ships arrived every few months. Beyond that, the field stretched to the mountains on the horizon. It was a beautiful sight, one that never got old. What Jake could not see were the small shapes moving among the stars above. 3 sleek ships hung in the darkness of space, their sensors focused on the peaceful colony below. They had been watching for weeks, mapping every building, counting every person, studying the humans' daily routines. Aboard the lead ship, Admiral Kefter of the Zephyrian Empire reviewed the data his scouts had gathered. The humans had no military installations, no weapons larger than small arms, no orbital defenses. Their technology was basic, their numbers small. It would be the easiest conquest in the Empire's history. The Admiral's scaled fingers traced over the images of the human settlement. 50,000 soft creatures playing in the dirt, growing food like primitive animals. They would make excellent slaves, and their fertile world would feed Zephyrian colonies for generations. "Prepare the invasion fleet," he ordered his subordinates. "We move in 3 days." Down on New Haven, Jake Morrison finished his paperwork and prepared for another peaceful day. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the fields where his people worked. Children played in the streets, families shared meals, and everyone looked forward to another quiet evening in their simple paradise. None of them knew that their peaceful existence was about to end. The galaxy's deadliest blunder was about to begin, and New Haven would teach the universe a lesson it would never forget. The first explosion shook Jake Morrison from his sleep at 4 in the morning. The blast was so loud that windows rattled in their frames and car alarms began wailing throughout the colony. Jake rolled out of bed and stumbled to his window, still half asleep and confused. The sky was on fire. Bright streaks of light rained down from space, each one ending in a massive explosion somewhere in the colony. Jake's heart stopped as he realized what he was seeing. This was not an accident. This was an attack. "Sandy, Sandy, wake up!" He shouted into his radio. "Get on the emergency channel now." Static crackled back at him for a few seconds before Sandy Brooks' voice came through, shaky but clear. "Jake, I'm here." The communication center took a hit, but backup systems are working. "What's happening?" "We're under attack." "Get the emergency broadcast going right now. Tell everyone to get to the shelters immediately." Jake threw on his clothes and ran outside. The sight that greeted him was worse than anything he could have imagined. 12 massive alien ships hung in the sky like dark clouds, their weapons lighting up the darkness with each shot. Strange fighters buzzed between them, diving down to strafe targets on the ground. The aliens had no idea what they were shooting at. Jake watched in horror as they destroyed the grain elevator in Sector 5, thinking it was some kind of military installation. A massive irrigation pump exploded in a ball of fire, and the aliens seemed satisfied that they had eliminated a weapons factory. They were destroying everything that made the colony work, but none of it was military. "Jake!" Lisa Bell came running up the street, her blonde hair wild and her security uniform thrown on hastily. "We need to get people organized. The community centers have the best shelters." "Right. How many casualties so far?" "I don't know yet. Dr. Hayes is setting up emergency medical stations at the school and the community center. The aliens hit some of the outer farms pretty hard." Jake nodded grimly. "What about weapons? How much firepower do we have?" Lisa's face was grim. 23 pistols, 8 hunting rifles, and whatever tools people can find. Against that, she pointed at the alien ships overhead. "We might as well throw rocks." An alien shuttle screamed overhead, heading for the landing pad. At the edge of town, more followed, carrying what looked like ground troops. Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The orbital bombardment was just the beginning. "Get everyone to the shelters," he told Lisa. "I'll coordinate from the emergency command post." The next hour was chaos. Families ran through the streets, carrying children and whatever belongings they could grab. The elderly were helped along by neighbors, while teenagers drove trucks loaded with supplies to the underground shelters. The alien bombardment continued, but it was clear they had no real intelligence about human settlements. They kept hitting farming equipment and storage buildings, leaving most of the residential areas untouched. In the underground command center, beneath the town hall, Jake tried to make sense of the situation. Sandy Brooks worked frantically at her radio equipment, trying to contact other human settlements. Nina Walsh had arrived with detailed maps of the colony, while Dr. Hayes sent reports about the wounded. 12 dead so far, the doctor reported, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Most of them were in the grain processing plant when it got hit. 37 wounded, but nothing I can't handle if I get the supplies. The aliens are landing troops near the spaceport, Lisa added. I count at least 200 soldiers, maybe more. They're moving toward the town center. Jake studied the map of New Haven. The colony was spread out over several square miles, with farms and residential areas connected by a network of roads. It was designed for peace and efficiency, not defense. But maybe that could work in there. Favor, Nina, you know this place better than anyone. If you had to hide people and supplies, where would you do it? The agricultural director studied the map carefully. The irrigation tunnels run under most of the farming areas. They're big enough for people to move through, and they connect to the main water processing plant. The aliens probably think it's just infrastructure. Perfect. Lisa, can you get volunteers to start moving supplies down there? Already on it. But Jake, we need to talk about something else. Lisa's voice was serious. I've been watching how these aliens fight. They're not very smart about it. They think we're just helpless farmers. But ... But what? But we're not, are we? I mean, we came here to farm, but that doesn't mean we forgot everything else. Jake knew what she meant. Ben Carter, the colony's maintenance chief, had been a military engineer on Earth before coming to New Haven. Mary Johnson might be a teacher now, but she had served in military intelligence for 10 years. Even Pete Sullivan, their mechanic, had worked on military vehicles before switching to farm equipment. The first alien ground troops reached the outskirts of town, just as the sun began to rise. They moved in formation, their advanced weapons ready, expecting to face terrified civilians begging for mercy. Instead, they found empty streets and an eerie silence. The first sign that something was wrong came when a patrol entered the main shopping district. The buildings seemed deserted, but a strange clicking sound came from everywhere and nowhere. 3 aliens rounded a corner and stepped directly into a trap that Ben Carter had improvised from farming chemicals and old mining equipment. The explosion took out half the patrol and left the survivors completely confused. In another part of town, Danny Rodriguez watched the alien soldiers from the roof of his family's store. The 17-year-old had grown up hunting in the hills around New Haven, and he knew how to move without being seen. He also knew that the fertilizer in his father's warehouse could be turned into something much more dangerous than plant food. Mary Johnson coordinated intelligence gathering from the school basement, using the colony's internal communication system to track alien movements. Her years in military intelligence had taught her how to read enemy patterns, and these aliens were following a textbook assault plan. That made them predictable. Pete Sullivan was in his element. The stocky mechanic had spent the morning converting farm equipment into something the aliens had never seen before. A grain harvester became a mobile fortress. Irrigation pumps turned into weapons delivery systems. Even the school buses were getting armor plating and gun mounts. As the morning wore on, the aliens realized that their easy conquest was turning into something else entirely. The humans were not running in panic. They were not begging for mercy. Instead, they were fighting back with a creativity and determination that the Zephian Empire had never encountered. Admiral Kefter watched the reports from his flagship with growing concern. His ground forces were taking casualties from weapons that should not exist. The humans were using their farming equipment as military hardware, turning every tool into a weapon and every building into a fortress. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "ground teams are requesting reinforcements. They say the humans are fighting like they know what they're doing." The admiral's scaled face twisted into a frown. How could simple farmers be giving his professional soldiers so much trouble? These were just humans, weak creatures who grew food for a living. They should have surrendered hours ago. Down on New Haven, Jake Morrison coordinated the defense from his underground command post. The colony that had wanted nothing more than to grow crops and raise families in peace was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about the dangerous mistake of attacking humans. The real war was just beginning. By noon on the second day, the alien invasion was not going as planned. Admiral Kefter stood on the bridge of his flagship, reading reports that made no sense. His professional soldiers were being outfought by farmers who should have surrendered immediately. "Explain this to me again," he growled at his intelligence officer. "How did we lose an entire patrol to a grain storage building?" "Sir, the humans have turned their farming equipment into weapons. They used some kind of explosive made from crop fertilizer. Our scouts report that they're coordinating attacks using their irrigation communication lines. These are not simple farmers." Down on New Haven, Nina Walsh crouched in the old water treatment plant, studying a hand-drawn map of alien positions. The agricultural director had not told anyone about her 20 years in Earth's military strategic planning division. She had come to the colony to escape that life, but now those skills were exactly what her people needed. "Danny, take your team through Tunnel Section 7, she whispered into her radio. "The aliens have a supply depot at the old Morrison farm. Hit it and get out fast." "Got it, Nina," came the teenager's voice. Danny Rodriguez had changed from a farm boy into something much more dangerous in just 2 days. He led a group of young colonists who knew every inch of New Haven's terrain, and they moved through the landscape like ghosts. Nina watched through binoculars as Danny's team approached the alien depot. The boy had natural tactical instincts that impressed even her. He positioned his people perfectly, used the morning sun to blind the guards, and coordinated his attack with precision that would make a military academy proud. The explosion lit up the sky. Danny's homemade bombs, built from Ben Carter's instructions and farm chemicals, completely destroyed the alien supply point. The teenage strike team disappeared into the wheat fields before the aliens could react. "Nice work," Nina said into her radio. "Now get to extraction point 3. Pete has something special waiting for you." Pete Sullivan had been busy in his workshop for the past day and a half. The colony mechanic had turned the equipment yard into a war factory. Tractors now carried armor plating and weapon mounts. Harvesters had become mobile gun platforms. Even the old school buses were now armored troop carriers. "Danny, over here," Pete called out as the teenager and his team arrived. "I got your new ride ready." Danny's eyes went wide. Pete had taken 3 crop dusters and turned them into something that looked like military attack aircraft. They had armor around the cockpits, weapon mounts under the wings, and engines that Pete had modified for speed and maneuverability. "Are you serious, Pete? These things can fly combat missions?" "Kid, I've been working on aircraft engines since before you were born," Pete grinned. "These babies will give those alien fighters a real surprise. Just remember what I taught you about the controls." Danny had been learning to fly crop dusters since he was 14. Every farm kid on New Haven could pilot the small aircraft. But now Pete had turned them into weapons of war, and Danny felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with fear. Meanwhile, Dr. Carl Hayes was discovering something interesting in his medical station. 3 wounded Zephyrian soldiers had been brought to him after a failed raid on the school. The doctor treated their injuries with the same care he gave to humans, and the aliens were completely confused by his kindness. "Why do you help us?" one of the wounded aliens asked through a translation device. "We came to conquer your world." "Because you're hurt," Dr. Hayes replied simply, checking the alien's bandages. "That's what doctors do. We help people who are injured." The alien soldier stared at him with large, dark eyes. In his culture, enemies were killed or left to die. The concept of treating wounded invaders was completely foreign. "Your people fight like warriors, but you show mercy like something else. We're human," the doctor said. "We can be both when we need to be." Mary Johnson had turned the school basement into an intelligence center that would impress any military commander. The former teacher used her students' knowledge of the local area and her own training to track every alien movement in the colony. She had created a communications network using the school's computer system and the colony's agricultural monitoring equipment. "Lisa, I've got alien reinforcements landing at Sector 12, she reported over the radio. "Looks like 2 squads moving toward the water plant." "Copy that, Mary. Ben's team is already in position." Ben Carter had become the colony's weapons expert almost overnight. The former military engineer was teaching other colonists how to turn everyday items into effective weapons. Fertilizer became explosives. Pesticide sprayers became chemical delivery systems. Even the kitchen equipment from the community center had been converted into something dangerous. "Remember," he told a group of farmers who were preparing an ambush, "we don't have their fancy weapons, but we know this place and they don't. Use that advantage. Make them come to you, then hit them where they don't expect it." The ambush worked perfectly. The alien squad walked into a trap made from irrigation pipes, farming chemicals, and pure human creativity. When the smoke cleared, the aliens were either dead or captured, and Ben's farmers had disappeared back into the landscape. Admiral Kefter was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not simple farmers. They were something much more dangerous. Every report from the surface told the same story. His professional soldiers were being outfought by colonists who seemed to have unlimited creativity and no fear. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost contact with 6 ground patrols. The humans are using guerrilla tactics that our training never covered. They turn everything into a weapon. They know the terrain perfectly, and they seem to have military experience that our intelligence missed. How is that possible? Our scouts said they were just farmers." "Sir, I think they are farmers, but they're human farmers. That changes everything." On the 3rd day, Danny Rodriguez led his first airstrike against the alien landing zone. His modified crop duster screamed low over the alien camp, dropping bombs made from fertilizer and fuel. Behind him, 2 other young pilots followed his lead. their aircraft dancing through alien defensive fire with skill that came from years of flying over New Haven's difficult terrain. The aliens had never faced anything like it. Their advanced fighters were designed to fight in space or high altitude. These human aircraft flew so low they were almost touching the ground, using hills and buildings for cover, attacking from angles that seemed impossible. "This is Danny." "To base," the teenager called over his radio after the successful strike. "Target destroyed. All aircraft returning safely." "These aliens really don't know how to fight in atmosphere." Nina Walsh smiled as she listened to the report. The boy was right. The aliens were used to space combat and planetary bombardment. They had no experience with the kind of low-level guerrilla warfare that humans seem to understand instinctively. By the end of the third day, the alien invasion force was in serious trouble. They had lost a quarter of their ground troops to human attacks. Their supply lines were constantly disrupted. Their equipment was being destroyed by weapons that should not have been possible to build from farming supplies. Most disturbing of all, the humans showed no signs of giving up. If anything, they seemed to be getting better at warfare with each passing hour. Every colonist was becoming a soldier, every piece of equipment was becoming a weapon, and every inch of New Haven was becoming a battlefield where the aliens were at a disadvantage. Admiral Kefter finally understood the truth. He had not attacked a defenseless farming colony. He had attacked humans, and humans were never defenseless. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and he had just reminded them why. On the fourth day of the invasion, Admiral Kefter woke up to discover that his forces were no longer the attackers. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had turned the tables completely. His professional soldiers were now the ones hiding in defensive positions while farmers hunted them across the colony. "Sir, we need immediate evacuation for the ground forces," his communications officer reported. "They're requesting extraction from 3 different locations. The humans have them surrounded." The admiral could not believe what he was hearing. Surrounded? How can farmers surround trained soldiers? "Sir, these humans fight like nothing we've ever seen. They know every rock, every tree, every building. They attack from directions that shouldn't be possible, then disappear before we can respond. Our soldiers say it's like fighting ghosts." Down on New Haven, Pete Sullivan put the finishing touches on his latest creation. The colony mechanic had spent the night converting the main grain harvester into something that looked like a mobile fortress. It had thick armor plates welded to the sides, multiple weapon mounts, and tracks instead of wheels. Most importantly, it had a surprise that would shock the aliens. "Danny, come take a look at this," Pete called to the teenager who had become New Haven's top pilot. "I think you're gonna like what I built." Danny climbed up onto the massive machine and whistled in appreciation. "Pete, this thing is incredible. What does it do?" "Watch this," Pete grinned, pressing a button on the control panel. A section of the harvester's top opened up, revealing a missile launcher built from irrigation equipment and fertilizer storage tanks. "I figured out how to make those alien shuttles come down to our level. You built an anti-aircraft system from farm equipment." "Kid, when you've been fixing machines as long as I have, you learn that everything has more than one use. This baby can take down their ships and clear ground targets at the same time." Meanwhile, Sandy Brooks had achieved something that the aliens thought was impossible. The communications officer had not only contacted other human settlements, but she had also managed to hack into the alien communication network using nothing but the colony's agricultural monitoring computers. "Jake, you need to hear this," she called from her improvised command center. "I'm listening to their radio traffic. They're scared. Really scared." Jake Morrison gathered around Sandy's equipment with Nina Walsh and Lisa Bell. Through the static, they could hear alien voices speaking in their own language, but Sandy had rigged up a basic translation program. "The humans fight like demons," one voice said. "They turn everything into a weapon. Our training never prepared us for this kind of warfare. Request immediate reinforcements, another voice pleaded. We cannot complete the mission. These creatures are not what we expected. Negative on reinforcements, came a third voice, clearly. From one of the ships in orbit. Admiral's orders are to complete the conquest with existing forces. Nina Walsh smiled grimly. They're starting to panic. That's when armies make their biggest mistakes. She was right. As the day progressed, the alien forces began making desperate moves that played right into human hands. A squad of Zephyrian soldiers tried to capture the school, thinking it would give them a tactical advantage. Instead, they walked into a trap that Mary Johnson had prepared using her knowledge of the building and her students' help. Now, Mary called out, and 15 teenagers opened fire from concealed positions throughout the school. The aliens found themselves caught in a crossfire, with no escape route. Within minutes, the entire squad was either dead or captured. Dr. Carl Hayes continued treating wounded aliens with professional care, and the effect on enemy morale was devastating. Word spread through the Zephyrian ranks that humans showed mercy to prisoners, treated wounds regardless of species, and fought with honor even in desperate circumstances. I don't understand these creatures, one captured alien told Dr. Hayes as the doctor treated a burn on his arm. You could kill us easily, but instead you heal us. You fight like warriors but show compassion like something divine. We're just human, the doctor replied. We do what we think is right. The alien stared at him with confusion and something. That might have been respect. Our intelligence said we're weak farmers. They were very wrong. Ben Carter had turned the colony's maintenance workshop into a weapons factory that produced devices the aliens had never imagined. His latest creation was a series of remote-controlled bombs built from tractor parts and agricultural chemicals. The explosives could be guided to their targets using modified crop monitoring drones. Lisa, I've got eyes on that alien command. Post near the water treatment plant, Ben reported over the radio. 3 guards, 2 officers inside. Want me to take it out? Do it, Lisa replied. She had become the colony's military coordinator, using her security training to organize the various resistance groups into an effective fighting force. Ben's remote bomb rolled across the field like a small tractor, completely ignored by the alien guards who thought it was just more farming equipment. The explosion destroyed the command post and sent a clear message to the remaining aliens. Nowhere was safe. The turning point came when Danny Rodriguez led his most daring mission yet. The teenager had been studying the alien landing patterns and noticed that their shuttles always landed in the same area. With Pete's help, he had prepared a special surprise. Danny to all units, he called over the radio as his modified crop duster approached the alien landing zone. Operation Harvest is a go. Everyone get ready. The alien shuttle came down exactly where Danny expected. As it touched the ground, Pete's converted harvester emerged from its hiding place in the nearby wheat field. The massive machine opened. Fire with everything it had, destroying the shuttle and cutting off the alien ground forces from their orbital support. Direct hit, Danny shouted over the radio. The aliens are stuck down here with us now. Admiral Kefter watched in horror as his shuttle was destroyed. His ground forces were now trapped on the planet's surface with no way to evacuate. Worse, reports were coming in that human military ships had been detected approaching the system. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, perhaps we should consider negotiating with the humans. Negotiate with farmers? Sir, these are not just farmers. I don't know what they are, but they've turned our invasion into a disaster. Half our ground forces are dead or captured. Our equipment is being destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist. And now they've cut off our retreat. The Admiral looked at the tactical display showing New Haven. The human colony was supposed to be under his control by now, its people enslaved or dead. Instead, his forces were scattered, demoralized, and fighting for survival against an enemy. that seemed to have unlimited creativity and no fear. How did intelligence get this so wrong? He asked himself. The answer was simple, though he didn't know it yet. Intelligence had been correct about the basic facts. New Haven was a farming colony with basic technology and no military installations. What intelligence had missed was something more fundamental about humanity itself. Humans were never just farmers or just teachers or just mechanics. They were survivors who had clawed their way to the top of their planet's food chain through intelligence, adaptability, and sheer determination. Give them tools, and they became engineers. Threaten their families, and they became warriors. Attack their home, and they became something that the galaxy had never seen before. On New Haven, Jake Morrison stood in his command center and looked at the tactical map. Red markers showed where alien forces were trapped or retreating. Blue markers showed human-controlled areas, which now covered most of the colony. "Sandy, any word from the human fleet?" "Admiral Henderson's ships will be here in 6 hours," she reported. "But honestly, Jake, I'm not sure we need them anymore." Jake nodded. The colony that had wanted nothing more than to grow crops and raise children in peace had become something else entirely. They had not just survived the alien invasion. They had won. Admiral Kate Henderson arrived at New Haven, expecting to find a colony in ruins and survivors hiding in shelters. Instead, her fleet dropped out of hyperspace to find something impossible. The human farming colony had not only survived the alien invasion, they had won. "Admiral, this is New Haven Colony Control," came Sandy Brooks' voice over the radio. "Welcome to our system. We have the situation under control, but we appreciate the backup." Kate stared at her tactical display in amazement. The Zephyrian fleet was in full retreat, with only half their ships still functional. The rest were either destroyed or damaged beyond repair. On the planet's surface, scattered groups of alien soldiers were sending surrender signals. "Colony Control, this is Admiral Henderson. Please explain your status." "We defeated the invasion force 4 hours ago," Sandy replied calmly. "We have approximately 300 alien prisoners who need medical attention and transport. Our casualties were light. Colony Administrator Morrison is ready to brief you whenever convenient." Kate had been fighting alien invasions for 20 years, and she had never heard anything like this. A farming colony with basic technology had destroyed a professional military force that should have conquered them easily. Permission to land? Granted. "Admiral, landing pad 7 is clear, and ma'am, you might want to see what our people accomplished down here." Kate's shuttle landed at New Haven to find a scene that would be talked about in military academies for generations. The colony looked like a war zone, but it was clear who had won. Destroyed alien equipment littered the landscape, while human-built weapons and fortifications showed the incredible ingenuity of the colonists. Jake Morrison met her at the landing pad, looking tired but proud. Behind him stood his people. Farmers, teachers, mechanics, and teenagers who had somehow defeated one of the galaxy's most aggressive military forces. "Admiral Henderson, welcome to New Haven. I'm afraid we don't have much ceremony prepared. We've been a bit busy." Kate looked around at the modified farm equipment, the improvised weapons, and the confident faces of the colonists. "Mr. Morrison, I need to understand what happened here. My intelligence said you were facing a full Zephyrian invasion force. We were. 12 ships, several hundred soldiers, advanced weapons. They thought we were helpless farmers. And you're not?" Jake smiled. "Oh, we are farmers. We grow the best wheat in this sector, raise healthy families, and live peaceful lives. But we're also human. That makes all the difference." Kate spent the next hour touring the colony and listening to the stories. She met Nina Walsh, who had used crop rotation principles to plan military rotations. She saw Pete Sullivan's converted farm equipment that had outperformed military vehicles. She watched Dr. Hayes treating alien prisoners with the same care he gave to humans. The most impressive sight was Danny Rodriguez, the 17-year-old who had led airstrikes against professional alien pilots using modified crop dusters. The teenager showed her his aircraft with the pride of someone who had built something amazing. The aliens never figured out how to fight at low altitude, Danny explained. Their ships are designed for space combat. But we've been flying over this terrain our whole lives. We know every hill, every wind pattern, every place to hide. You're telling me that farm kids outflew trained military pilots? Well, yeah, we had home field advantage. Kate shook her head in amazement. It was so simple, so obvious, but the aliens had completely missed it. They had attacked humans on human terms, and humans always won that fight. Ben Carter showed her his workshop where farming tools had been converted into weapons that military engineers would struggle to build. The aliens kept looking for military installations, he explained. They never realized that everything we needed was already here. Fertilizer makes excellent explosives. Irrigation systems make perfect communication networks. Tractors make great fighting vehicles with a little modification. How did you know how to do all this? Ben shrugged. I was military before I came here. So was Nina and Mary and a dozen others. We came to New Haven to get away from war, but when war came to us, we remembered what we needed to know. Mary. Johnson was coordinating the prisoner processing with the efficiency of a career intelligence officer. The former teacher had organized the alien captives, documented their equipment, and debriefed them about Zephyrian military doctrine. The interesting thing, she told Kate, is that they're not evil. They're just soldiers following orders. Most of them seem relieved that the fighting is over. What will you do with them? Dr. Hayes says they'll all recover from their wounds. After that, we'll send them home with a message for their government. What message? Mary smiled. That attacking human colonies is the deadliest mistake any species can make. Admiral Kefter was brought to meet with Admiral Henderson and Jake Morrison under a flag of truce. The Zephyrian commander looked like a broken alien, his confidence completely shattered by what he had experienced. I don't understand, he said through a translator. Our intelligence was accurate. You had no military installations, no advanced weapons, no trained soldiers. How did you defeat us? Jake looked at the alien admiral with something like pity. You made the same mistake that every aggressive species makes when they encounter humans. You looked at what we were doing and assumed that's all we could do. I don't understand. We were farming because we chose to farm. We were peaceful because we chose to be peaceful. But when you forced us to fight, we became fighters. That's what humans do. We adapt. Admiral Henderson watched the exchange with fascination. Admiral Kefter, you attacked a human colony with the assumption that farmers couldn't be warriors. But humans are whatever they need to be. The same hands that plant crops can build weapons. The same minds that plan harvests can plan battles. The same people who teach children can outthink your military strategists. The Zephyrian admiral stared at them both. Then humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Only when threatened, Jake replied. Leave us alone, and we're harmless farmers and teachers. Attack us, and you'll learn why humans are survivors. 3 days later, the surviving Zephyrian ships limped home to their empire, with news that would change galactic politics forever. The easy conquest had become a complete disaster. The defenseless farming colony had humiliated the Empire's military and captured advanced technology. Word spread quickly through alien communication networks. Humanity was not what it appeared to be. Human colonies might look peaceful, but they were actually the most dangerous targets in the galaxy to attack. On New Haven, life slowly returned to normal. The wheat still needed harvesting. Children still needed schooling, and equipment still needed maintenance. But the colony was forever changed. Pete's converted farm machines remained as permanent defenses. Danny kept his modified crop dusters ready for patrol flights. Ben's workshop continued producing defensive weapons just in case. Jake Morrison stood in his office, looking out at the fields where his people worked. Families were together, children were laughing, and the harvest was coming in on schedule. It looked exactly like it had before the invasion. But now the galaxy knew the truth. There was no such thing as a defenseless human colony. New Haven had proven that attacking humans was not just a military blunder. It was a civilization-ending mistake. The farmers who wanted nothing more than to grow crops and raise families had reminded the universe why humanity had survived and thrived among the stars. The galaxy's deadliest blunder had become humanity's greatest victory, and the lesson would never be forgotten.